I want us to look at the key issues of data security and accountability, particular to the information system professionals, the professionals in the information system area or sector. What are their what are the key data security issues, and how are these professionals accountable? Okay. In other words, we are trying to look at what an organization needs to do in order for that organization to be able to achieve security accountability, um, accountability of information systems when you look at the context of cloud computing. Now, to determine if an organization is accountable for its information security, the first step that is involved is to determine and define the core elements of the information security accountability. So there are four key or core elements of information security that are being accounted for, which include assurance, we have remediation, we have responsibility, and we have transparency. We consider these four to be the core elements if you want to achieve information security accountability. Now, let's look at the definition of these four elements. The first one is assurance. What is assurance? Assurance is simply a well-founded belief that all relevant actors are complying with governance and ethical measurements, and also promoting the implementation of practical mechanisms that support them. Remediation, on the other hand, is the methodology by which an organization provides remedies for those whose privacy has been put at a risk. For instance, you've been collecting data, private data for your clients, and now the private data for the clients have been accessed by external people who are using it maliciously. So how are you going to remedy, how are you going to compensate these people? Okay. How are you going to actually remedy that particular situation? Number three is responsibility. So when we talk about responsibility, or we define responsibility as the acknowledgement and the assumption of responsibility by relevant actors that they have introduced or have in place appropriate policies and procedures. Transparency, on the other hand, is the availability and provision of relevant information in a clear and timely manner to the relevant actors or the relevant people, the relevant departments, the relevant organizations, etc. So we also need to look at the accountability support environment, which is basically the context of information systems, the level of support that the organization provides in regards to how accountability is implemented, and by providing what we call environment, which is actually supporting that accountability, so that looking at the overall level of accountability is going to be increased. So there are studies that were done, and findings were made that there are two main sub-elements that influence the level of support of accountability. And these sub-elements include: one, the executive management, and two is documentation. The first one is the executive engagement, which is how the management directs and makes follow-ups by the executives that are in the development of information security policies. So you have the executive that oversees, does an oversight, and that shows high level of engagement towards the reviewing and also the issuing and implementation of policies to make sure that they are matching the national or maybe international criteria that is accepted or the criteria accepted by the laws of the country. Now, the executive engagement will actually boost the efforts of information security towards accountability. So we also have documentation, which is all the processes and procedures that are done in information security as a reference for future work that are actually going to provide evidence of accountability. And if there is a failure to provide documentation, is going to lead what we call is going to lead to the reduction of accountability, of course, according to the various respondents that are in place. So it's very important to make sure that you document all the processes and the procedures in information security as a reference for the future, which is also going to give an evidence that you are accountable, or your information system caters for accountability. The documents are supposed to be kept up to date. In other words, they're supposed to be updated, and all the security aspects that are implemented in the organization should have a proper means of implemented solution. The next thing that we need to look at is the flexible change process. So we should have the respondents being clear of the opinion available that the change process in the context of accountability, or maybe for cloud computing, is going to require flexibility in relation to changing or altering the policies of ICT. Not only policies, but also the plans, the processes, and the procedures. We have many parties that are putting emphasis in the ETA policies. Reason is because they are comprehensive. Okay, they have plans that need to actually to be tailored to fit some specific business needs. So they also point out that the changes that ITA give is able to allow clients to actually integrate some new protocols that have not been addressed in the already existing ITA policies as the information security arrangement is done. So this is talking about, or it is introducing an inflexible change policy. I mean, a flexible change policy, since an inflexible change policy does not allow organizations to actually to be held accountable, or to be properly accountable to all their requirements. So when you have a flexible change policy, it is not without its associated challenges. So the policy is flexible, yes, but it has challenges that it brings. Okay. The other thing is collaboration. So if you look at the context of accountability for information systems, or information security in information systems, it is all about cooperation. Cooperation that is going to be there between the people that work in that information system, including the information system management team, and also the organization. Now, why do we need collaboration? Collaboration is going to ensure that every one of the partners are actually responsible for their actions, and also they are actually held accountable when breaches of regulations actually occur. When rules are broken, when policies are broken, who are we going to hold accountable? We're going to hold the people accountable based on the actions that they are actually performing. So when we have collaboration, it means we're going to have everything transparent. We're going to have everything we can hold some instant discussions about any non-compliance that is actually existing, or any policies that are breached, or we can think about or figure out how to actually overtake issues that are inexistent. And that can happen immediately as long as we are in cooperation with the client. So basically, it is going to ensure that the information system management is actually is doing what has been agreed to in the what we call the contractual part, or the assigned service level agreement, which is initialized as SLA. And we also have a secondary level of collaboration that happens to achieve accountability, and this collaboration is between the organization and some two other entities that I call regulators and some data subjects or individuals. So it can be between um, regulators and data subjects, or between data subjects and individuals. If you look at the compliance and collaboration process between individuals, business partners, and also the regulators, you realize that they're actually touching the surface of accountability. So if we enhance collaboration, we have parties that felt parties feeling that achieving accountability was noticeable easier than situations where collaboration was minimal or non-existing at all. Now this is because collaboration builds trust between the business partners. We also have mechanisms. So if we look at mechanisms in the context of information security accountability for cloud computing, is actually the way that information system management team assured the clients on how service level agreement, or the SLA terms and the conditions that are executed in the real world. So we are looking at the assurance, on how do the clients trace any breach or non-compliance aspects by ETA. So we look at a list of mechanisms that has to be established by the organization, and that has to be performed in a way that ensures the information security policies and even the privacy effectively practiced and appropriately implemented. We have the mechanisms that might include tools. These mechanisms that we are talking about might include tools, might include training, might include education. Now, when we look at the tools, we are talking about the recommended tools here that might be used to facilitate the decision making about some appropriate data use and protection, whereas the training combined or working along with education or education sessions can be used to actually identify how to use those tools and processes. So customers may then be provided with shared service portal. When we talk about shared service portal, we are talking about a dashboard of the statistics of the basic SLAs and the business process. So it is actually going to give the customer that kind of credibility, since it is going to tell the customer openly if your SLA and even information security policies are right or not. So we have all the staff that are involved in collecting and managing the personal and migrated data is actually mandatory to have them trained. Okay? And also they need to attend education sessions about how that portal is used. A failure to have these mechanisms in place is going to undermine information security accountability in the information system context. We have commitment to external criteria. In the context of information security accountability for computing, when we talk about commitment to external criteria, we are talking about a willingness and a capacity to actually adopt and use the organization's external policies and practices. For example, we can be talking about the external criteria, or what is included in these external criteria, which are things like the local policies, the industry standards we have, the best practices, and we have the government law and regulation. So if you look at the context of information security, failure to actually commit to commit to the standards is actually going to show that there is lack of knowledge of the complexity of the information security, and there is inability of any one organization to be able to deal with the wide and varied threats that are in the area. So organizations must make sure that they implement policies connected to the external criteria that can be found in the country law, that can be found in the industry best practices, to actually protect the migration of information to cloud and privacy of individuals and even business partners. So an organization that does not adopt actually or use the external criteria as a reference point is not seen by the client as being accountable for information security. So if we actually comply with the external criteria, you will see, and it was noticed, that we are not going to tolerate with vendors and suppliers and individuals and users who are non-compliant. So there's need for us to actually comply. So I want us to move to risk management strategies. Risk management strategies. And the first thing we need to ask ourselves is, what is a risk? Basically, a risk is a threat. That is, a risk with a negative impact on project objectives, or maybe an opportunity. That is maybe a risk that is bringing a positive effect on project objectives. And also, accordingly, you're gonna get it. I hope you're going to have it back. Okay, yeah, it's back. It's back. So we can continue. So we're saying a risk can also be a threat can also be, a risk can also be one that is bringing positive effect on project objectives. So there are different, or we have different strategies, of course, to deal with the negative and the positive risks when it comes to project management. For obviously, I know that many people, when you mention risk, they always think it's a negative, but a risk can be positive or negative. Whatever result that can come can either be positive or negative. That is still a risk. So what is risk management then? Since we have seen there are risks in information systems, and we need to employ risk management strategies to handle these risks, then what is a risk management, or what is risk management? So risk management is basically the identification, evaluation, prioritization of tasks, followed by the coordinated and economical application of resources to minimize, to monitor, and control the probability or impact of unfortunate events, or to maximize the realization of opportunities. So risk management basically is going to involve you identifying, okay, a risk, evaluating that risk, and giving some prioritization on the various risks that you have. Then engaging some economical applications of resources to make sure the risk is minimized, the risk is monitored, the risk is controlled, and we have reduced the probability or the impact of some unfortunate events, or we have maximized the realization of opportunities in the cases of positive risks, in the cases of positive risks. So let's look at the strategies, negative risk management strategies. The first one is avoid. When we avoid, we are eliminating the risk by removing the cause at all. We are removing the cause totally. So it might lead to doing the activity or not doing the activity in a different way. Now, the project manager here can also change or bring isolation to the objective that is in trouble. So there are risks that can be actually avoided at an early collection of information by making sure communication is improved between the stakeholders or by use of expertise. Now, an example of this approach includes extending the schedule or maybe changing the scope of the project activity. Another example could be something like a risk which is too hazardous that it may lead to maybe a loss of life, and this is avoided by shutting down the entire project. Number two, transfer. So in the transfer approach, the risk is shifted to a third party. You're not going to handle the risk by yourself. You're shifting to a third party. The third party, for example, you can talk of an insurance company or you can talk of a vendor where you are paying that insurance company, you're paying that vendor to accept or handle the risk on your behalf. And hence, the ownership as well as the impact of the risk is borne by that third party. For example, when you buy a car, you are facing the risk of getting involved in an accident and the car is totally destroyed. So for you to overcome that risk, or you might even hit somebody and you have to pay them, and you don't have that money to pay them. For you to be able to overcome that risk, that is why you are paying insurance for your car. That is why you are paying insurance. So the insurance is actually an example of a risk transfer. That if something happens with this car, then my insurance company is going to be in charge, is going to handle this. Okay. So you actually pay, and that payment we call it the risk premium. Call it risk premium. So you're paying risk premium to transfer your risk for another person to handle the risk for you. Now, when we do risk transfer, we are not eliminating the risk, but it is going to reduce the direct impact of the risk on you or maybe on the project. So that is also important that you understand. Number three, there is mitigation. When we do mitigation, we are reducing the probability of the risk to occur, or we are trying to minimize the impact of the risk in limits that are acceptable. So we are basing this approach on the fundamental principle that earlier the action taken to reduce the probability or impact of a risk is actually more effective than doing fixes to repair the damages after the risk. In other words, prevention is better than cure. An example of mitigating a risk includes the use of advanced technology or maybe best practices to actually produce more defect-free products. Or mitigation may actually require a prototype developing to measure the risk level in the case where it is not possible to reduce actually the probability of the risk. So the risk impact reduction is targeted by identifying the linkages that actually determine the risk severity. Number four is accept. Acceptance simply means accepting the risk, especially when there is no any other strategy that is suitable to actually eliminate the risk. So we can have passive acceptance or active acceptance. Passive acceptance requires no action to be done except to document the risk and also leaving the team to deal with the risk as it occurs. But when you talk about an active acceptance approach, we are talking about the contingency that reserve is actually designed to recover the losses of time, money, and also resources. If this risk occurs, then we have a strategy that we are going to recover the time wasted, we're going to recover the money lost, we're going to recover the resources lost. Those are negative risk management strategy. The positive risk management strategies includes one, exploit. So when you look at exploitation basically is going to increase the chances of making a positive risk happen. because it's something positive. So we are increasing the chances of it happening. So we are actually increasing the chances of a positive risk happening, and that is going to lead us to an opportunity. So as a project manager, you're going to actually you are given sufficient and efficient resources to take advantage of this particular employment. So when we follow this approach, we are reducing the uncertainty that is actually associated with the positive risk by ensuring that this risk really happens. Number two, share. For example, you have a project team that is not fully capable of taking advantage of the opportunity, then they can call in another company to partner with. So the expertise of maybe another company is actually to leverage or to maximize the return out of that opportunity. For example, of sharing opportunity could be forming risk sharing partnerships. We have teams, you have unique purpose companies, we have joint ventures. Yeah. And all these parties that actually are sharing this risk, they are going to gain based on what they have invested and whatever actions that they are taking. Number three is enhance. So enhancing actually is involving the increasing of the probability of the occurrence of the risk by and also expanding the impact it's going to have. All this happens by identifying and also influencing the various risk triggers. For example, you can talk about uh, adding more resources to project activities to finish it earlier. That can be an example. Number four, accept. So accept involves the taking of the advantage of the positive risk as it's going to happen, but we are not going to actively pursue it. So it is an opportunity coming, and we accept it without actually making some pre-planning.